About 46% of all cyber breaches impact businesses with fewer than 1,000 employees. Small businesses receive the highest rate of targeted malicious emails, with 1 in every 323 businesses impacted. Business email takeover is the type of hack where a business is targeted, its email server is hijacked, and the hackers perpetrate various scams including fraudulent wire transfers. Victims of these crimes face significant interruptions in business operations and reputational damage among their customers. Some even shut their doors as a result. It's a terrible problem, but a problem you can prevent. Well, joining us today to do a deep dive on email security is Stephen Jordan, a cybersecurity expert and founder of Sound Cybersecurity. With over 32 years in IT and cybersecurity, Stephen brings a wealth of knowledge in email security, particularly DMARC. Today he'll share insights on safeguarding your small business against digital threats and navigating the complexities of cyber compliance. Stephen, welcome to the Small Business Matters podcast.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here, Gary.
So can we start by talking a little bit about DMARC? Can you explain it and why it's essential for small businesses to implement in their email security strategy?
Absolutely. DMARC is a wonderful tool that we have available to us as an email security tool. Unfortunately, it's just the way that email is designed. Anybody who has the technical ability to open up and create an email server can immediately start using your email address or anybody's email address for that matter. And in the process of doing that can, launch malicious attacks. It's a shame that they're able to do that, but they are. And DMARC is a way to put a stop to that completely. So it's a great tool, and the reasons and benefits to it are many. But of course, the biggest one to me is that ability to stop cyber criminals from using our email addresses. But it also improves the reputation of our legitimate email messages, so they're more likely to land in an inbox instead of a junk folder. It helps protect our business brand. It helps protect our business reputation. And it's also a great way to just be a good neighbor on the internet, because when I enable DMARC for my domain name, not only does it protect me, but it also protects everybody that I interact with email.
Mm. So what are some of the common challenges that a small business might face when setting up and maintaining DMARC, and how can they overcome these obstacles?
I think the initial challenge is just like anything else is learning something that can be complicated and complex. And also getting over misconceptions. And when I say that, it's not just misconceptions for business owners or managers. Even with our own IT industry, or within our IT industry, there are a lot of people that have many misconceptions about DMARC and what it does and how it works. And, some people just kind of foo-foo it off as being unimportant. But when you really stop and you take the time to learn, you just you'll find how important that it really is. And so to overcome those obstacles, really, I think there's one of two ways. They either decide they're going to dive in and do it themselves, or they're going to, contract that work out to somebody like myself to take care of it for them. Once you decide which way you're going to go there, of course, for me, I would prefer they use me to take care of it. I've already learned what I need to learn and can do all of those things for them. But if they're going to go the route of do it themselves, they really need to make sure that they invest in a good tool to help them, because this isn't something that you just do on your own and can handle with your own inbox.
Yeah, I set it up once, and it was a little involved. I work with a consultant as well to help me through it. It didn't take too long to get up and running, but I saw some immediate benefits. Now, there are other protocols out there like SPF and DKIM. Why is it important to use them together?
Yeah, well, DMARC would be nothing if it weren't for SPF and DKIM.
Okay.
Those three things go hand in hand. Of course, DMARC, we also know is email authentication, but SPF and DKIM and DMARC combine to make up this wonderful tool. And so we couldn't survive without those other protocols. And SPF is the one that's initially checking to be sure that the email message is really coming from a legitimate source, someplace that you've published you allow email to be sent from. DKIM, of course, is stepping in and using private and public keys to encrypt portions of the message to make sure that that information about where it came from and who it came from is intact and legitimate. And then DMARC takes the final step and confirming all of that and making sure that it all really aligns with the domain name you're sending from. So it's a combination. And even though we just say DMARC or we just say email authentication, it's really a team effort from all three of those protocols.
Yeah, as a business owner myself, it must be very unsettling to be a victim of some of these attacks that are executed. But I would be in the minority, right? Having DMARC set up. Could you share some percentages on businesses that actually go that extra step? I don't think it's big,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's funny because initially you look at it and of course my statistics run really close with others that I see published, but I have checked the status of DMARC on thousands of domain names, and what I have found through all of that is that roughly 82% of all domain names that exist do not have DMARC configured at all. So when you look at that and you go, well, 82%, so that means 18% do, that's almost 1 in 5. So statistically that, we're off to an okay start. Well, no, not really, because when you dig into that 18%, so 10% of the total, they do have DMARC enabled, but their policy is set to none. And maybe I should say at this point that there's when you do set up DMARC, you have to choose the three different settings, and those settings are none, quarantine, and reject. And when you say none, it's a great starting point. We all need to start there because that's what we use to start monitoring the reports and look at what's going on so that we don't create any problems or so that we know what problems there are. Once we get those things configured, we have to move up from there. But those statistics show that 10% of the total are set to none, and I don't see those changing a lot. I don't go back and recheck them all, but there's very, very few of those actually progress from none on up to the higher levels of reject and quarantine. So out of that leaves 8% of all domain names that are at least on quarantine or on reject. And the way that breaks down is about 5% of the total are on quarantine and 3% are on reject. Now, what's not so great about that, even worse, is that when you start looking at those, what I find is that, so take that, 5% that are on quarantine, only half of those actually specify a source to send the daily aggregate reports to. Same thing with the 3% that are on reject. Only half of those domain names are set to send the report somewhere. So if you really want to get down to the final details of how many people or what percentage out there are really using DMARC to its full capacity, it would be the people that are set on reject and they are actually looking at the reports. So that means really about 1.5% of all domain names. So if anything, right now we can say that there's maybe 2 out of 100 businesses are actually fully implementing DMARC. So we have a long way to go to put this wonderful tool to use.
That's a shocking statistic, really, when you think about the reputational damage it could do on a small business. Um, I mean, podcast listeners, this is something you're going to want to rewind and re-listen to here. And if you are not working with a professional in this and you need help, you got to call Stephen up and have him come and help you get all of this set up.
Definitely.
Let's talk about a few real world examples or case studies where implementing DMARC significantly reduced email fraud or phishing attacks for a small business. Do any come to mind?
Yeah, well, I'll give you a couple of my own, but it's interesting because you can go on the internet and you can find tons of statistics about
Yeah.
pre-attack times or how many attacks happen, and but once people enable DMARC, you don't really get too much in the way of statistics because at that point we've really put a stop to it. So I keep my dashboard open for my tool, and um, I've got one particular client here in mind. Let me just pull them up real quick. So over the last 30 days, this is a client of mine that's in the technology sector. And, in the last 30 days, they have had 263 compliant messages. So those are messages that they have sent that are completely legitimate, but they've had 1,549 illegitimate messages sent as if they're from their domain that really they are not. Now, because we've set up DMARC, we've stopped those from reaching the inboxes that they would have reached. So we really don't know, what any one given message would have done or how much of a problem it would have caused. But that is a significant percentage of messages going to their clients, their vendors, other people that they may interact with that we've put a stop to. There are many other clients I have. Some of them aren't as large in those numbers. We've had some small, I've got one oil and gas client that, he might have a volume. He's a sole proprietor. He might have an email volume of 50 messages a month. But every now and then we'll see one, two, three illegitimate messages that were sent from his domain name, and they got stopped. So we really don't know. Did we prevent a phishing attack that in that particular message's case? Maybe somehow it would have been stopped by some other means, but DMARC put a stop to it ever even getting there in the first place.
Yeah. Um, so the technology is obviously continuing to evolve. How do you see the role of DMARC and email security evolving, especially with the rise of sophisticated cyber threats? And now we've got AI as
Right.
a toolbox, right, or a toolkit for a lot of these hackers. How do you see it shaking out in the future?
Yeah, you think back to medieval times, and the weapon got bigger and the armor
Yeah.
got bigger, and we just kept going back and forth, and I think we have seen that, and history shows that, so we'll continue to see that going forward. With DMARC specifically, right now it is not a requirement.
Mm.
You do not have to have it in order to be able to send email. So I think part of the evolution at some point will be that it will be a requirement, and you will have to have it. The way DMARC works right now, we talked about it working in conjunction with those other two protocols. Well, those two protocols do have to be functioning properly, but for DMARC to approve a message, ultimately only one of those other two have to align with your domain name in order for a message to get through. I could see as this continues to evolve that there would come a time when both of those would have to align. So getting stricter with DMARC and actually enforcing it. But Yahoo and Google in February, coming up here soon, they are going to start enforcing it for anybody who's got a large volume. If you're a sender of 5,000 emails or more, they are going to start enforcing DMARC for those senders. So we're starting to move in that direction. and I think that'll be there. But as far as email goes, I wish I had a crystal ball to tell you exactly, and I could be wrong, but I could see the day coming when we each end up having to have our own certificate
Hmm.
that represents us. That there is some connection between the email messages that we send and something physical that identifies that it was really us that sent the message. Not that that's going to kick SPF, DKIM, and DMARC out of the picture. I think it'll remain as a layer, but I could see that. I remember in the sixth grade, my teacher asking us to, draw a picture of a football player and what we thought a football player would look like in the future. And for most of us, the pads just got bigger. And, and I can just see that with email that, those layers and the security we put behind it will continue to evolve. I wrote a great blog on my website a while back. I think the title of it was something like, email's not a one and done thing, or sorry, email security is not a one and done thing. And there's just a lot of different things we need to do. And DMARC is one of those great pieces to that puzzle.
But we'll include a link to that blog post in the show notes, listeners.
Great.
I've heard, and Experian has reported on, one of the greatest cyber risks to a business is through their employees. How can businesses train their employees to recognize and respond to phishing attempts effectively?
Yeah, so you have to have a security awareness training and testing in place to just keep people aware and give them the knowledge. There are a lot of people that just don't understand, and doing something like that security awareness training and testing will definitely start introducing them. It will test them so that if they are somebody who's more prone to click on things that they shouldn't, the testing will draw that out and you can start bringing that to their attention. But that's I think is definitely the beginning step for helping those employees improve. But there are so many things. We've seen so many statistics now that like 1 out of 5 employees are actually would be willing to sell their password to a cyber criminal. There's just so many things that are out there these days um, that make it tough on a business to you know to to not only just teach but also to enforce and protect. And you can implement wonderful policies, but that, just like traffic laws, that doesn't mean everybody's going to follow them.
Yeah. Well, and the phishing emails are getting so good. I mean, some of the impersonations that they're doing and they're able to design, it's easy to be fooled. Do you think sending fake phishing emails to your employee base just to see what cross section of your employees could be needing you retraining? Is that a technique?
Yeah, yeah, that's what the testing usually does. Is it does send out those types of just UPS package delivery. Click here to check the status of your package. Whatever it may be, those testing email messages are sent, and then instead of course communicating with a known bad actor out there, that just are collected in your company's testing data, and you can see who is clicking on those messages. And it's a great tool to definitely say, okay, employee such and such, yeah, you definitely need to go back through and read or rewatch this particular training.
Mhm. There's probably some very young businesses listening today. Through the pandemic, we've seen a wellspring of new businesses, millions of new businesses being created. And some of them are probably outsourcing email operations. Do you have any advice for businesses that are perhaps outsourcing their email infrastructure to another company? What should they be looking for?
Yeah, and I bet the vast majority of us are doing that these days. And I think the best thing to do there is just remember, like I said earlier from that blog, that email security is not a one and done thing.
Yeah.
You may be told by whomever you're outsourcing your email to that you that they've implemented an email security solution for you. You may even see on your monthly invoice that you're paying for a separate email security solution, but that doesn't mean that you're done. I mean, that is just one of the pieces of everything that needs to be done with email security. So if they're outsourcing it, I think the biggest thing for business owners and managers is don't assume that everything is done. Definitely open the hood, take a peek, see what's going on, and ask important questions, and uh, use somebody like myself, or you know get a third party opinion on how they're doing with that security.
Yeah. Yeah, and discovering that the DMARC hasn't been set, I mean, that's going to be a revelation for a great many, I would imagine.
Yes.
So, how can small businesses develop and enforce effective email security policies, and what compliance aspects should they consider?
I would definitely say that there are so many great security policies that every business needs to have in place. Password policies and acceptable use policies, and all there's a long list of those. But as far as enforcement goes, you've really any decent company that's either providing or promoting those policies, one of the pages is getting the employee to sign off that they have read and received those policies. I think that is a huge step in moving towards better adoption and acceptance and obedience to those policies. But you're still going to get people that aren't going to do them, and I can hear my HR professionals' words ringing in my ears about stepped discipline and you know verbal warnings and written warnings and final warnings, before you take action. So, but it's really hard to me. Do you fire your best salesperson because they're not following all of
Mm,
your email habits? That's a tough decision to get down to. That guy may be making you tens of thousands of dollars per month, but if his bad email habits suddenly end up ransomwaring the entire company, where is that balance and benefit there to having that employee? So I think they definitely want to develop those policies, get everybody to sign off on them, and follow up with real action. The sad thing that I am seeing occasionally, it's not in the news a lot, but we are seeing that employees are beginning to get named in some of these lawsuits that are
mm,
occurring. So that's a huge wake up call. Of course, it was a huge wake up call for those of us in the IT and in the cybersecurity business. You make a mistake, you can end up on the wrong side of the lawsuit. So that everybody that's involved needs to realize that they are the last line of defense. You don't have to be in the IT department. You don't have to be a CEO. Anybody and everybody, you're the last line of defense. And it's funny when I do occasionally send out some bulk emails promoting DMARC, I'll get some people to respond back, and they just go, oh, this doesn't matter to me. I'm not in the IT.
mm.
Well, it really should matter. It doesn't matter if you're the janitor and you're checking your email on your cell phone. You're still part of all of this.
Yes. At Experian, it's job one. It's the first thing, the first priority of the business is security. So we take it tremendously serious here. Um, this has been extremely illuminating and valuable. Do you have any closing thoughts about email security, Stephen?
Yeah, I think go back to what I previously said of just don't make assumptions. Definitely take a look. Let somebody take a look for you if you don't have that technical ability, and just Rome wasn't built in a day. Nobody's expecting you to be perfect this afternoon. It's going to take time, but just start looking into it, and start implementing one thing at a time until you get to a point where you can say you're comfortable and know full well something new is going to come along that we're all going to have to adopt at some future point. And it's just inevitable, and it'll keep evolving and changing, and we'll keep evolving and changing with it.
Excellent stuff. Where can our listeners find out more about you and the services you provide?
Absolutely. They can always go to my website at soundcybersecurity.com. Welcome to shoot me an email if they'd like. Stephen, Stephen at soundcybersecurity.com. Or they're welcome to give me a call if they'd prefer to do that. My number is 866-772-8181.
Fantastic. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you, Stephen. Thanks for sharing so generously with our audience.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, Gary.